Yeah.
We got London on the track.
This is all God's doing, man, you can't plan it. But if the devil's in the details, then I'm satanic.
People's kid, how we doing? It's your boy Kobe back at it again with another video, and as always I hope you guys are having a blessed day. Have a dope video today, and it is with regard to one of the more interesting storylines of a former NBA player's fall from grace, and that is none other than Carlos Boozer. Now, a lot of the younger viewers may not remember much from Boozer, but I think it's important that we review what I think to be a career that was somewhat forgotten for his success and more for his failures at the tail end of it. Per usual, if you enjoy, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more content like this, and with that said, let's jump right into it. In the year 2018, it is arguable to say the landscape of the NBA has never seen rosier times. With high popularity fueled by a strong social media presence combined with major stars seen as global ambassadors for the game, it feels like there is nothing that could slow down what might be America's most popular league out of the four major professional sports. Furthermore, as the competition to enter the NBA inevitably gets more difficult every year, the level of skill required at each position has risen to an all-time high. Evident from the utter lack of interest from back-to-the-basket big men in free agency this year, including the number 3 overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft, Jahlil Okafor, the need for players to have some degree of offensive and defensive versatility is no longer a nice bonus, but borderline a necessity. In fact, you can make the case a myriad of great players of the NBA's past would be throwing up need-to-work signs in today's free agent market. Which brings me to the topic of discussion: Carlos Boozer and one of the forefathers of the modern-day exiled big men. In review of Boozer's early life, Carlos was actually born on November 20th, 1981 at a military base in West Germany, but spent his childhood growing up in Alaska. Although clearly not known for their basketball, the state of Alaska has produced a few NBA players that some of you may know about. Yet without taking any type of shot at Mario Chalmers, apart from maybe Curt Schilling and his bloody sock, Carlos is quite possibly the greatest professional athlete to come out of Alaska, grabbing 2 state titles and earning the Alaskan Player of the Year award 3 times. After leading the 1999 McDonald's All-American game in scoring by dropping 22 points, Boozer headed to Duke University, where he would follow another fellow Alaskan, Trajan Langdon. At Duke, Carlos flourished right away due to his high skill level and ability to rebound the basketball. In his sophomore season, Boozer helped Duke win the national title and came back to dominate his junior campaign, averaging 18.2 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, on a ridiculous 66.5% from the field. As you can see from his college tape, Carlos was not the most explosive athlete, but he had incredible touch and a great feel for the game on the offensive side of the ball. Despite Duke surprisingly losing to Indiana in the Sweet 16, Boozer had proven he was more than ready to enter the league and perform against the pros. Yet while Carlos was seen as a player with very good fundamentals, his physical traits left a lot to be desired for many draft scouts, as his modest height and shorter than average wingspan made it hard to project how effective his game would be in the NBA. As a result, Carlos actually slipped to the second round, where he was selected 35th overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers. After the pick was made, a much younger Kenny, Chuck, and Ernie added some key points to Boozer's trajectory.
I think the biggest problem people have is his size. I mean, he's built like a power forward, but realistically he's only like 6'6", 6'7". And in the NBA, I think the biggest problem some of these teams have, what position can you play? There are a lot of terrific basketball players in the country, in the world, but in the NBA, unless you're real good, you have to play a particular position or you're going to be called a tweener, and it's a struggle.
While it is certainly a fair point made by Barkley, it is a bit ironic considering he's one of the more successful undersized power forwards in NBA history. Of course, Chuck was far more athletic and nimble than Carlos, so the question on Boozer's value in the league was valid. The good news for the rookie was that the team he was joining was coming off a 29-53 season, so the opportunity for minutes was quite high. And despite Cleveland having another horrific year, this potential for burn on the court became a reality as Carlos managed to play in 81 games and start in 54 of them, averaging 10 points per game and 7-point rebounds a contest in only 25 minutes. As a result of his efforts, Boozer was given a spot on the all-rookie second team. Clearly seeing his offensive talents translate seamlessly to the pros, Carlos would get the honor of playing with the one and only LeBron James, the first overall pick in the 2003 NBA draft. But as history shows, it seemed Boozer did not particularly see LeBron as the transcendent player he would turn out to be, evident from this short clip.
We have better players than him in his position already on our team, though. His potential is probably the sky's the limit for him, though.
On one hand, You can admire Boozer's pride for not admitting a high school player would instantly be better than anyone on the Cavs roster as soon as he walked on the court. But on the other obvious hand, you might have to ding him a little bit just for his inability to recognize LeBron's greatness. With that said, the King and Carlos turned out to be a better pair than expected. As we all know, James was the real deal at 19, and Boozer continued his work as an excellent pick and roll player. For the full year, Carlos upped his averages to 15.5 points per game and 11.4 rebounds, officially establishing himself as one of the more talented young big men in the league. And although the Cavs finished with a worse than average 35-47 record, the future looked bright with a potential young duo of James and Boozer to build around for years to come. Well, that is until one of the most unthinkable occurrences in NBA offseason history happened in the summer of 2004.
You still a nail biter?
I have a little bit, not of late.
Well, you've had everybody else biting their nails, so I guess it's time for them to stop chewing. The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In 2010, the decision that was heard around the world occurred when LeBron James decided to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers in favor of heading to the Miami Heat. As some Cleveland fans recognize this as a betrayal of first magnitude, other Cavs fans picture a young Carlos Boozer saying, "Hold my beer," 6 years earlier. You see, Carlos had a contract with Cleveland in 2004, and he was meant to be paid a bit over $700,000 a year as part of his rookie deal. Due to his excellent performance the 2 prior seasons, however, the Cavs decided to be generous and reward him by allowing Boozer to opt out of this deal on the condition that he would re-sign in Cleveland for a deal worth $41 million over 6 years. With Rob Pelinka as his agent, Boozer allegedly agreed to this arrangement and officially became an unrestricted free agent this summer. Now here comes the kicker. Soon after Carlos was on the market, several teams attempted to gauge his interest in signing with them instead. One of these teams happened to be the Utah Jazz, a squad that clearly could use the help of Boozer, and thus decided to offer him a whopping 6-year, $68 million contract. For reference, that is $27 million more than the Cavs offered. While nearly everyone tried to get Boozer to remain faithful to Cleveland, including Boozer's college head coach, Coach K, Carlos could not resist the dollar signs and signed with Utah over Cleveland. Just like that, the once highly positive reputation of Carlos Boozer was destroyed within hours. In fact, the move proved to be so unpopular that Rob Pelinka and his agency decided to fire Carlos in an attempt to save face on a clear lapse of judgment by both parties. Even though Boozer swears to this day he never told the Cavs he would automatically sign with them, it definitely was a black eye in his career that some sports columnists speak about even to this day. The good news for Carlos, though, was that he was going to a city and fan base that couldn't care less about the ethics, and Boozer was instantly embraced in his 3rd season. Unfortunately, while again Boozer took another leap in his production, the Jazz were god-awful and finished with a 26-56 record. Simply put, there just wasn't enough guard play on the roster to compete in any shape or form. Yet, as this was widely obvious to management, the Jazz front office made a franchise-changing decision by drafting Deron Williams in the 2005 NBA Draft. A stocky point guard with a top-level feel on how to run the pick and roll, Williams thrived in Illinois the year before on a team that almost won it all. And although Boozer was injured for most of the year, the breakout for D. Will and C. Booz occurred in the 2006-2007 season, where they became one of the best big man point guard duos in the entire league. In his own lane, Boozer took it to another level, averaging over 20 points and 10 rebounds a game, while making a point to be a little more forceful at the rim, as he became one of the leaders in dunks this season. And for the first time in his career, Boozer's all-star production along with Deron led his team to the NBA playoffs with a 51-31 record. All this alone would give Carlos an A for the season, but he wasn't done yet. In fact, he was about to have the biggest peak of his entire NBA career. In the first round of the 2007 NBA playoffs, the Utah Jazz faced the Houston Rockets in a battle between two squads that were looking to get more respect in a crowded Western Conference. Having never won a first-round playoff series, the Rockets' Tracy McGrady and Yao Ming were desperate to get over the hump before the national media would forever call their pairing a failure. Sad news for them, the Jazz were not willing to fold as they fought tooth and nail to match Houston through 6 tough-fought games. After starting out with the horrendous Game 1, Carlos delivered on a 41-point game performance in Game 2 and actually played some quality defense throughout the series. And when lights were brightest in the Game 7 rubber match, Boozer was simply the best player on the court, scoring 35 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists and helping the Utah Jazz upset T-Mac and the Rockets on their home court. For all of the criticism Carlos has gotten in his career, it amazes me how many people forget this Game 7 performance that very few NBA players have ever had in their entire career. Also, the biggest play Boozer made had nothing to do with his 35 points. It was an offensive rebound on a hustle play at the end of the game.
About the overall game and the fact you guys are advancing.
Well, I'm going to tell you, this was a hell of a series. Both teams played terrific all season. I mean, the whole series. We tried to attack them, try to be more physical, get more free throws. They did a great job. I mean, for a while, it was back and forth scoring, back and forth free throws. And I'm just happy we're moving on.
Although this was the biggest moment of the playoffs for Boozer, he continued to have an excellent postseason as the Jazz made it to the Western Conference Finals to challenge the San Antonio Spurs. Despite showing some strength, they were no match for Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, and Pop, and eventually lost in 5 games. But even in defeat, their performance and success in these playoffs raised the profiles of both Darren and Carlos, now seen as formidable young NBA superstars that could bring the Jazz back to the days of Karl Malone and John Stockton. Even without the same success in 2007-2008, Boozer and Williams were selected to the 2008 Redeem Team to help bring back gold to the disgraced U.S. national men's basketball team. Of course, with high-profile guys like LeBron and Kobe on the squad, Boozer was not a marquee contributor, but the selection itself proved to be an honor and testament to where his status truly was 10 years ago. So what exactly happened? How did an NBA All-Star with a great reputation across the league and mutual respect from his peers become such a laughingstock to fans almost overnight?
If I never play again?
Boozer.
Well, the first major turning point was his decision to leave Utah for greener pastures in Chicago during the 2010 free agency. After striking out on LeBron James and D. Wade, the Bulls opted to sign Boozer for a 5-year, $80 million contract. Although Jazz fans were by no means devastated to see him go, it was clear to many of them that Boozer was a guy that focused on getting paid and staying healthy for his free agency, even if it meant sitting out a great portion of games for the Jazz over his couple seasons. Focusing on the move to Chi-Town, however, while Boozer had a clear financial incentive to come to the Windy City, it couldn't have been a worse fit for him from a chemistry standpoint. After hiring head coach Tom Thibodeau, the defensive mind behind the Boston Celtics 2008 championship, there was a strong emphasis on the side of the ball that wasn't towards Boozer's strengths. And the lackadaisical character trait that Bulls fans learned so well from Carlos happened before Chicago played their first game when the man tripped over a bag at home and ended up missing the first 2 months of the 2010-2011 season. Luckily for Bulls faithful, it was D. Rose's MVP season, and nothing was stopping him or Chicago for that matter from becoming a contender for championship glory. Yet once Boozer did return, despite his occasional flare of offensive production, his game clearly stood out in the rotation when compared to hard-nosed players like Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, and Taj Gibson. Before you knew it, even with the $10 million per year price tag, Tibbs opted to rotate Carlos in and out of the lineup to optimize offense and defense. Now, it wasn't like Carlos didn't produce at all during these Chicago years. He was still well equipped to put up 20 points and 10 boards on any given night, but the fact that he was such a misfit among the grinder Bulls squad, combined with his at the time gaudy contract, many Bulls fans quite frankly could not understand his value, and this perception shifted towards the larger fan sentiment across the league.
Finds Collins a beautiful pass. I hate to be critical, especially of veteran players, but Carlos Boozer, the last 2 plays, very soft defense. Look at the blow-by here. If you're Boozer, I mean, where's the help defense?
Because he was not a threat to rim protect and his effort to contest outside the lane was inconsistent at best, his offensive production could not save him in the eyes of Chicago. After 4 years in Chi-Town, the Bulls cut him loose and he ended up to go play for the Lakers in a season where his bad defense even showed on a young and inexperienced ball club. By the time the year was over, even on averages of 17 points and 10 rebounds per 36 minutes, Boozer was done, and his NBA career was over just like that. To be honest, Carlos was one of many undersized big men who couldn't adjust his game to fit in an ever-changing NBA. Certainly Boozer did himself no favors by having such a me-first attitude when it came to his contracts and lack of loyalty, but even the staunchest of critics could not argue he had an incredible offensive skill set that he showcased for over a decade. And no matter how horrendous his defense was, Boozer was one of the funniest guys in the league. That's a fact. Anyways guys, that's the vid, hope you enjoyed. Had to do a vid on C-Booz as he's a player that I think has a bit of an interesting reputation and wanted to give a bit more context to his career. Let me know what you guys think. What is to make of Boozer's career? Is his legacy underrated, or is it fair as a result of how he performed on D over his final years? Comment your thoughts below. With that said, hope you guys have a great rest of the day or night. I'll be back at it soon. Peace out.